Good morning, welcome back to Football League World TV. It's the start of another week, which means it's time for the weekend review. I'm your host, George Dagless, and joining me this morning, Ben Wignall and Billy Mulley. Ben, how are you?
Yeah, all good, George. It's a bit of a different mood to last week. I was here this time last week after a bitter Derby Day loss, but I think lots changed in a week. Pretty content.
Yeah, certainly a happier weekend for Preston North End fans over the weekend. We'll get onto that later on. Billy, how are you?
Yeah, well, good. Thank you. As you were saying, some good matches in the EFL during the week. A 10-goal thriller in League Two, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, we'll get onto that as well, what happened at Oldham against Forest Green later on. Plenty to talk about from the weekend in the EFL. Do get in touch, let us know if you were at a game over the weekend as well. We're across Facebook, YouTube and Twitter for the next half an hour or so. Let's get straight into it and talk Championship action first. We're going to start with Swansea 1, Nottingham Forest 4. Four different goal scorers for Forest at Liberty Stadium. Philip Zinkenagel, Lewis Grab and Brennan Johnson and Cafu all on the score sheet. Joel Pirro did get a goal for Swansea, but it proved pretty academic in the end. Ben, let's come to you first of all. Forest 2 wins on the spin. They're gradually climbing the table. Do you think we should start thinking about them a bit more seriously as playoff contenders now?
Yeah, definitely. I think they've only lost once, haven't they, since Cooper came in, and that was against Fulham, which, the form they're in at the time, it's not really anything to be too disappointed about. I know Swansea have lost a few in a row going into this, but still beating them 4-1, considering some of the results they've got in previous months, is a bit of a, kind of a statement result. They only had 25% possession, Forest, which, is very low, but they were quite happy to kind of soak that pressure up that Swansea would create. I mean, they've obviously had a lot of passes like they always do under Russell Martin, but it looks like they didn't really do much with it. I think the good thing for Forest is the goals come from everywhere. Like you said, 4 different scorers even. Cafu's not played much, got his first goal. So, it's a real positive sign heading into January for Forest, considering you don't know what's going to happen. The likes of Jed Spence might end up going back, so they'll need to sort things like that out. But still think they need to add a few more players, be very consistent and get into those playoff places. But I think it's clear to see on current form right now they are one of the best teams in the division.
Yeah, certainly climbing up the table nicely at the moment for us. As for Swansea, they're going the wrong way. Now down in 16th, 3 losses in a row now. Billy, what do you make of their recent struggles at the moment? It's quite a heavy defeat as well at home over the weekend.
Yeah, it's really surprising actually, because I think once Martin instilled his game style and his sort of style of football at Swansea, it seemed that they turned the corner. It seemed that it was only going one way. It seemed that they were the team that were heading towards the playoff positions, but 3 straight defeats now have completely changed that, and they're back to looking over their shoulder, I guess. I think that they're closer to the relegation zone. I think in terms of points, they're the same amount of points from the playoffs as the relegation zone. So it's quite a difficult time, especially when it seemed that this corner had been turned and performances were there. They're still dominating the ball, but it's what they do with it. I think we spoke in the weekend preview show about this over-reliance on Patterson and his creative tendencies and getting him on the ball. So that might be an area to look at in January. But at the moment, yeah, they need to find a win somehow again and get that confidence back.
Yeah, certainly do. As mentioned, Swansea in 16th after that result, Forest up to 8th, and they're certainly looking as though they're going to break into the playoff places sooner rather than later. Up next, and I'm sure Ben is going to enjoy this particular section of the show, we're talking Preston's win over Barnsley. Ryan Lowe's first game in charge as well. At Deepdale, Alan Brown put P&E in front. Cordy Woodrow did get a goal back for Barnsley, but Daniel Johnson got the winner 12 minutes from time. Ben, makes sense to come straight to you for this one. What did you make of Preston under Ryan Lowe the first time you'd seen them?
But it was a lot better to watch than I think most of the season. I mean, we did have some rare good games or good halves under Frankie McAvoy, but I think it was clear to see from the first few minutes in particular that the style he was going to play Ryan Lowe, it was a similar formation to what McAvoy played, 3-5-2, but the wing backs were higher up, the defenders were playing it out from the back instead of, playing long direct balls, and it was just kind of like exciting to watch again. It wasn't, academic by any stretch of the imagination. We still kind of gifted a few chances very easily, and I think we were made aware of the fact that it might not be like plain sailing straight away with how Law wants us to play, in the thirds and on the floor. And he's only had a few days to work with the players on the training ground. So I think Barnsley probably could have scored more than one. They did have some good chances, but I think on the balance of play, PNE probably did deserve the win with the chances they did have. And it was just nice to have a bit of excitement back at Deepdale again. There was, they had, I think, about 1,000 fans more on than the Fulham game a few weeks ago. And the atmosphere was a lot better as well. And Law's made it very clear that he wants to get, the fans on side and back through the turnstiles. And, it was a pretty good start to do that. I know Barnsley in the bottom three, but I don't think they played like a team that were down there. I was pretty impressed with him, considering the lowly position they're in. But yeah, it was a kind of a satisfying win to watch from a PNE fan's point of view.
Yeah, certainly looks like Ryan Lowe's already having an impact on that Preston squad and wider facets at the club as well. Billy, as for Barnsley, Ben mentions there that they perhaps looked better than their league position suggests, but you have to look at their results and where they are in the league table. They're 8 points from safety, and they've not really had much of a new manager bounce either, have they?
Not at all. And as you say, and as Ben says, it seems that Barnsley did put in a decent enough performance, but I think that can be stretched towards the end of Shop's era as well. I think they were playing well without getting the results, and that's continued over to Asbaghi's reign now. And whilst these performances are not there, because if they were, they would be picking up some points. They are seemingly improving. I think it's a long process, but at this point of the season, we're approaching the midway stage. It's now about getting results on the board, and I think that's 2 points from 5 games now for the new Barnsley manager. So something needs to change within that squad, because if you look at what they've done last season, and the likes of Moat and Daryl DK have departed, but apart from that, the core of the squad's still there. It seems really strange that they've gone from the highs of last season's playoff push to the lows of barely competing in the Championship now, it seems. And yeah, it's very strange to see, because they've got a very, very good squad in my eyes. At least they should be operating around mid-table. But yeah, something needs to change there in terms of the results.
Yeah, certainly does. Certainly a bit of work to do for Barnsley. I think it's fair to say they're currently sitting 23rd, as mentioned, in the Championship League table. As for Preston, they are up to 14th. Up next, we're going to talk Luton Town's draw with Fulham. I think it makes sense to come to you, Billy, first of all, this one, given that you're a Hatters fan. What do you make of the display from the home side, first of all?
Really impressed. I mean, in the first 15 minutes, it was what you'd expect. Fulham dominating possession, just pushing us back and sort of camping just outside our box. So it was a good start from Fulham. You could tell why they were top of the league. The football they were playing was unlike what we've seen at Kenilworth Road this season. But then we sort of made a tactical change with Musgrave pressing a little bit further and Jordan Clark coming inside to deal with Jean-Michael Seri, and it seemed to change the game completely. Fulham, it completely disrupted their rhythm. We started playing on the front foot, getting really good opportunities to level, and that really happened in the second half as well. We got a goal, deservingly equalised, and I think we ended up as the better team with the better chances. There was a big shout at the end for a penalty on Fred Onyedinma, and in total fairness, there should have been one the opposite end for Sonny Bradley in the first half. But yeah, I think on the balance of play, a 1-1 draw was probably the most suitable result for the game that played out at Kenilworth Road.
I mean, as for Fulham, Ben, this is 4 draws on the spin now. Given how good they were before the international break, it's a team to have changed a little bit, particularly in terms of their goal scoring prowess. They've kind of left the door a little bit open for the likes of West Brom and Blackburn Rovers to catch them up. I mean, Bournemouth, who we'll get to in a minute, they're struggling too. So it seems a bit odd with the top two right now.
Yeah, I don't really know what's happened. Obviously, I think Fulham, who've drawn against Derby, PNE, Bournemouth, and even though the Bournemouth game was a really good game, they probably had enough chances to win that. And to be fair, coming into this game, I did think it would be a bit of a struggle. Kenilworth Road is a pretty narrow pitch, intimidating atmosphere, and I don't think it would have suited Marco Silva's side whatsoever. I think Luton are a good team, and they will make the so-called bigger teams in the league uncomfortable. So I don't think it's a bad point in this by any stretch of the imagination, but I just think it also makes it clear that gulf in quality is not as big as we probably thought it was between Fulham, Bournemouth, and the rest of the league. Teams are getting results off both of them, and going into the January window, it probably shows that both of those teams maybe need to strengthen a bit more than they thought. But they do need to start picking up wins again, Fulham especially, to try and extend that lead at the top of the table, because they were very comfy at one point, and now it's looking at a bit too uncomfortable with what West Brom and Blackburn did at the weekend.
Yeah, certainly is. Fulham still top, as we mentioned. Luton sitting in 12th after that 1-1 draw. One final game to talk about in the Championship from the weekend. That's Bournemouth's 2-0 defeat at home to Blackburn Rovers. Ben, let's come to you first of all. Talk Blackburn Rovers, unfortunately for you, as you're a Preston fan. They're pretty much the form team in the league, though, at the moment, aren't they? So we can't not talk about them. What sort of impressed you with them, particularly, at the weekend, beating a Bournemouth team that, yes, is out of form, but is still, hugely fancied this year?
Well, you look at the experience levels between the two teams. Obviously, Bournemouth have got the experiences likes of Cook and Cahill and other players who've played at the top level. Whereas, Tony Mowbray's he's put a team together of young Lawneys and players who've been, untested kind of at the top level, and they've gone to a Bournemouth team who, like to attack and like having possession, and they've soaked it all up and hit them with two, I think, pretty much set piece goals in order. The first one's a bit fortunate with it coming off the bar and hitting Ben Pearce in the face, but you've got to win ugly sometimes, and Blackburn, they've been winning 1-0, 1-0 in this one, even though it was 2-0. They probably did have to grind it out, and considering what I saw from them last week, I know that the weather did affect things at Ewood Park, but I didn't expect him to go to Bournemouth and get a result. I think clearly Tony Mowbray, for what criticism he has got over the years, he's clearly got a young, hungry squad finally playing for him, and you wouldn't realise that some of these top players that he's got have got contracts expiring. You thought maybe that could be playing on their minds, but it doesn't look like it's playing on the minds. It looks like they're playing with a lot of freedom at the minute. Things have clearly turned since that 7-0 defeat against Fulham. They've been in really good form since then, and I just think the main issue is, the rumours surrounding Ben Brereton and what might happen in January. I think they really need to keep him if they want to be in the playoffs or even still challenging for that automatic place, because they're definitely in that race now if they keep that form up, and what with Bournemouth and Fulham both dropping points.
Yeah, certainly looking good, Blackburn at the moment. Billy, as for Bournemouth, after Preston beat them and their unbeaten run finally come to an end in the Championship, they've only won 1 of their last 7 games in the league. At what point does a blip become a rut for the Cherries, and how do they get out of it? Because they're really limping along now.
Yeah, well, I think at the early stages of the season, they were very devastating and clinical when going forward, and I think they've lost that. I think with Fulham, the performances have been there. They've been dominating teams in terms of possession, in terms of territory. But with Bournemouth, they've just been taking their chances. They've taken advantage of big little spells in the game. Where they have been on top, and that's where they've given themselves a platform to build on. But they haven't been capitalising that at the moment. I think that's where it's going wrong at the moment. I still don't think it's too concerning. I still think levels of performance they're there. They're still playing good football. They're still creating chances, but it's just finding that touch again, that killer touch. And I think even against Fulham, they displayed that they are a top team in this division. Not many teams will go to Craven Cottage and put in a performance like that. And think of the goal as well that they scored, they've still got that little bit about them even during this little blip. So I don't think they'll be too concerned. The thing that they'll be concerned about is the fact that West Brom and Blackburn are continuing to win. The gap's now been cut to 3 points. So in terms of points, they'll be disappointed and starting to look on that. But in terms of performances, I don't think it's awful yet. I still fancy Bournemouth to be within the top 2 as the season progresses, because I still think that West Brom are still too inconsistent, and Blackburn, I'm not too sure whether they can sustain it.
Okay, we'll see what happens. Certainly tightening up though at the top of the Championship table, which is what we all want to see. Makes it a little bit more exciting for the neutral. Blackburn in 4th and in good form. Bournemouth still in 2nd, but they certainly need to get back to winning ways sooner rather than later now. Let's talk League One, and let's look at the bottom of the 4th tier table, and a big win for Fleetwood Town over Gillingham. 2 sides that have been struggling a lot this year, but Gillingham in particular really starting to plummet, and that's a really important win, 2-1 for the Cod Army. Ben, let's come to you first of all, talk about the home side. Is that something you think that maybe they can start building on it and get themselves away from the bottom 4?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, obviously they underperforming a lot under Simon Grace, and he had a pretty decent squad to work with this season. But I think Stephen Crane is coming as caretaker manager, and he's, giving himself a good advert for getting the job full time. The 3-0 win over Bolton in midweek, and now this, I think it may be a route that the club do go down. This is kind of like a cheaper option that's working. And one thing he has done is, he's regularly putting kind of academy graduates into the squad, the likes of Jay Matete and Paddy Lane, who's, I think, read in a stat, he's got 7 assists in 16 games. He's coming from non-league, and he's only started 8 of them. So he's clearly making an impact. And against the Gillingham team, we're going to be direct under Steve Evans. Could have been, a baptism of fire for some of those youngsters playing against a team like that. But with the experience of the likes of, Tom Clark, who ended up scoring, I think they stood in good stead for the rest of the season. They might not, end up pushing on up to that, top half, because League One is really competitive. I know you can get out of that trouble with a good run of results, as Charlton have proven. But I think Fleetwood should be fine if they keep getting results like the last 2. They've definitely got some firepower, even with, they've got Callum Morton, Jed Garner, even Joe Garner, when he's fit, can be a handful still at this level. So I'm not surprised they're picking up results, just need a bit of confidence, and that seems to be what they've got now.
Certainly is. I mean, you mentioned firepower there, Ben, and that's something that Gillingham have really lacked so far this season, isn't it, Billy? I mean, only Doncaster have scored fewer goals than them this year. Gillingham have also won the fewest amount of games joint with Crewe, who are sitting bottom. I mean, the stats don't lie. It's looking pretty bleak for the Gills at the moment.
Yeah, they're lacking, as you say, in goals, lacking the cutting edge, and 5 straight defeats now without a win in 8. So it's a run of form that's gone into a rot, and I think Evans is definitely feeling the pressure now, blaming the ref again, blaming players that he's got at his disposal, saying that you've got recruit in January. So it's not a good feeling within the Gillingham camp at the moment, and rightly so, because the results don't suggest that they should be happy. The performances as well don't really suggest anything either. So the good thing at the moment is that it's so tight around the relegation zone that 1 win and you're back out of it. So that's the only thing that's probably keeping Evans not content, but not going over the edge at the moment, is because that it's so tight, and a run of a couple of good results like what Fleetwood have achieved can get you out of that and start progressing again. So not the best at the moment at Gillingham, but again, it's not going to be the end of the world because it is so tight.
Certainly is. Gillingham sitting 22nd in the league table. Fleetwood currently 19th, 2 wins on the spin, as we mentioned, for them. Up next, we're talking Doncaster 1, Shrewsbury 0. Important result for Doncaster, Ben. It obviously a much needed win, well overdue for Rovers, but also it just keeps Shrewsbury, in touch in terms of relegation battle as well.
Yeah, I think it was a much needed one for Doncaster. You know, I think it seemed like a pretty even game, you know, between two struggling teams at the bottom end of the table. But I think sometimes you just need that bit of luck, and it just so happened to fall after Richie Wellens was dispensed of. Obviously, it was probably a tough decision to part ways with him, considering he's a kind of a fan favourite at the club. But the results weren't all there, and something needs to change, and something obviously has changed already with a first win for a while. I'm not convinced it's going to be, you know, the catalyst to turn the season around. I don't know who's going to take over full time, but you know, we'll see what happens there. But there's definitely talented individuals there at Doncaster. You know, they brought some decent loanies, and you know, Ethan Galbraith from Manchester United is probably a player that could flourish under a new manager. They've just clearly not been working as a team now. Maybe things will change at second half of the season, and they'll kind of get a manager in who can get the best out of those players. But I'd be a bit reluctant to say it's going to be a win to change the season. It's the start of something that could be a lot better.
As for Shrewsbury, Billy, you know, it's the sort of result that you really don't need when you're trying to build your own bit of confidence to get away from the drop zone. Losing to a team that's been poor all year, must be said, and that's below you in the relegation zone is only going to, you know, increase fears about the rest of this season.
It's really disappointing as well because, as Ben says, I've not been impressed with Doncaster one bit this season. They are where they are because of their performances, because of results, and it hasn't been a very good start to the season. And they are, as looking on an individual basis, you do look at them and you think they do have a talented squad. But yeah, they haven't really shown that at all this season. The home form's the only thing that's really keeping them from being bottom of the league by sort of quite a way. And I think that's the same could be said for Shrewsbury because their away form has also been dire. I think it's only 2 points from 11 games away from home. So that's really, really damaging when you're trying to steer clear of the relegation places. And it's also disappointing for Shrewsbury because they've been on a pretty decent run, drawing with Sunderland, then beating Charlton, being the only team to beat Charlton in the Johnny Jackson era. And then they fell to a 90th minute defeat at Wigan. So to come on the back of that, probably brimming with confidence because that's three very difficult matches and they've shown themselves to deal with the threat and progress from there. But no, it hasn't happened in that way. And now we're looking at Shrewsbury back within that relegation fight. So it's quite a bad situation again at Shrewsbury. It's one result that puts them back into sort of that negative thinking. But overall, they're in this relegation fight, and I'm sure that they've been used to it by now. And I think of them in a better light than Doncaster. I think they've got that fight in the squad to probably edge it if it comes to the relegation fight coming the end of the season.
Okay, both certainly still in it though at the moment. Doncaster sitting 23rd in the League One table, Shrewsbury Town in 20th. Finally, let's talk League Two and the game that we probably all wanted to come to at some point this morning. Oldham 5, Forest Green Rovers 5. I don't really know where to start with this, but at one point Forest Green were 4-1 up, which given where the two teams are in the league table and given how good Forest Green have been defensively as well, it's kind of hard to believe that it ended 5-5. Ben, let's start with you on this one. Let's talk Oldham. How impressed were you, I guess, with their just sort of fighting spirit and never say die attitude, particularly given how bad their season's been so far?
Yeah, I think we know there's a lot of issues like off the pitch there as well. And obviously has been on the pitch with a lot of changing upheaval at the club. And when I saw the scores coming through when I was at the PNE Barnsley game, I just thought I've got an old high school friend who plays in defence for Oldham, and I was worried that he'd be getting a bit of pelters, but it turns out he was on the bench, so I think his blushes were a little bit spared from that one. But to be 4-1 down in second half and to come back to make it 5-5, it's it shows you've got the attacking talent. You need to sort out what's going on in defence. Obviously, I know they dispensed of Keith Curl a few weeks ago, and it seemed like they just went gung-ho in the second half. And you don't expect to score 2 or 3 goals against Forest Green, let alone 5. So they're clearly doing something right at one end of the pitch, Oldham, maybe not so much at the other, but it's something to at least build on. I know they're still in the bottom two. I'm not convinced they're one of the two worst teams in the division now, with the talent they've got. They just need to get someone in to kind of bring it all together, steady them a little bit and help climb up the table. But if this is a result that can start pushing them up the league, then I think it could be a good one.
Yeah, you never know. It could well be a catalyst. As for Forest Green, Billy, we've seen them involved in quite left field games before already this season. There was a 6-3 win over Crawley very early on. So if you look at their defensive record, that's 8 goals they've shipped in those 2 particular games. And in the league, in the league table so far, they've conceded 20 in the other 18. So why do they suddenly go a bit mental in certain matches, do you think?
I don't have a clue. It's very, very difficult to put your finger on, but they've become reliant on their attacking firepower more than anything. But it's just crazy to think that the league leaders have scored 5 goals away from home and haven't ended up coming away with all 3 points. But I think that's going to be a bit of a boost for the teams chasing them. I think before that it was looking as if Forest Green were going to run away with it, like Northampton, Swindon, Exeter, all thinking, okay, now second and third places up for grabs. But this will be an excellent boost for the teams chasing them at the moment, especially with Northampton winning again. So, you look at Forest Green and you think they're vulnerable now. There's definitely potential to hurt them and to get good results out of them. So in that respect, teams I think will be viewing this result as perhaps a little bit of a changing point. Oldham as well will be viewing this as a chance to build on and get away from the relegation zone. So yeah, I think it's a game that could spark a lot of emotion within the rest of the division as well. And yeah, it's for Forest Green now, it's about bouncing back. That they've shown when they've been handed little bits of disappointment this season, because there hasn't been many aspects of disappointment so far, but they've reacted well and responded well. So it's another big test for them. Can they come back from this, and can they still sort of mount this top spot challenge that they've been doing this season?
Yeah, no, certainly a surprising result, I think, to say the least, over the weekend at Boundary Park. Oldham in 23rd after that draw. Forest Green still top of League Two. One final game to talk about in League Two before we wrap up the weekend review on Football League World TV, and that's Carlisle's win at Stevenage. 2 sides that are struggling down in the bottom of the League Two table. Billy, let's come to you first. Well, let's talk Stevenage, who are a side that are fairly close to you, given where you are. Not a good result, particularly at home against a team that is obviously was below them in the League Two table, but has now gone above them with that victory.
Yeah, not looking too good for my hometown, and it's. I think when Tisdale came in, it was quite a good feeling because of the sort of attractive nature of his playing style and the results he's got before with Exeter, and how he manages and sort of the pedigree coming in. But it's not started too well at all. They're being dragged back into that relegation battle that they seem to move on from a couple of weeks ago. But I still think they've got the squad, they've got the manager now in place to get over the line and survive again. But this is another result that suggests that they're right back in it. Carlisle haven't been very good at all this season. They've been another side that have been in the relegation zone, but they've comfortably won this game. And you think the attacking firepower that Stevenage do possess, Reed's come in and has been a real attacking asset this season. Elliot List, I don't know how he's still playing at League Two level, and especially within a side that is struggling near the bottom end of the division. Luke Norris as well is a very, very good striker. I just don't understand where it's going wrong, the squad that they do possess. But yeah, credit to Carlisle though. It's another good result. I think that's 6 points from the last 9 to escape relegation positions and sort of bring some positivity back to Carlisle fans.
Yeah, I mean, as Billy mentions, Ben, Carlisle have won 2 of their last 3, which no other side in the bottom half of League Two has done. I mean, that sums up the nature of League Two to some extent. But if Carlisle can just keep picking up a win every other game, they're soon going to get themselves, up and away from the bottom 2, aren't they?
Yeah, I think they're slowly but surely picking up results under Keith Miller. And I still think it could potentially be a long, hard season. I don't think there's that much in terms of quality between, it's kind of the bottom 7 or 8. You've got the likes of Colchester in there at the top of that pack as well. All those kind of teams are, basically operating on the same kind of, quality level. But I definitely think there's worse teams in the division than Carlisle, and they've got some players in there who, I'd expect to be, looked at in January. I think we broke an exclusive this week that Callum Guy, who's probably their most creative asset in midfield, is wanted by, the money bags of Wrexham in the National League. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. But, it's definitely a positive to make a long trip, to somewhere like StEVENAGE, even though they're struggling as well and get a result. It does breed a bit of confidence that they can get out of this kind of sticky spell they've got in the in the bottom 3 or 4 and start moving up into mid-table.
Yeah, certainly a good result for the men from Brunton Park at the weekend. That now leaves them in 21st, just above Stevenage, who sit 22nd. That brings the weekend review to a close for this Monday morning. Coming up on Football League TV, one other show today, 4 p.m, the EFL Transfer Zone. Sam Rourke hosting that one. He's joined by Alfie Burns, and Ben will be with them as well. But from myself, Billy and Ben, thanks for joining us. Thank you two for joining me this morning as well. Do subscribe to Football League TV on YouTube. That'd be greatly appreciated. And do like this video as well. That would help us out a great deal. But from us here, it is bye for now.